Thank you for joining us. We are going to give folks just a few minutes to get settled, and we will get started shortly. For those of you that are joining, thank you so much for taking the time to spend your night with us. We're just going to give folks a few more minutes to get settled, and we will get started shortly. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Stacy Falcioni, and I am part of the outreach team. I am here to help facilitate this OCTA Measure M2 10-year review community webinar tonight. So again, thank you for joining us, and we're going to get right into it. So for those of you that have a need for Spanish or Vietnamese live interpretation, we have that for you tonight. You can go ahead and click on the interpretation icon, and those languages are being spoken currently. So you can go ahead and do that. And that information is also shared here on our slide in Spanish and Vietnamese. And just as a quick reminder, we are recording this session for all to know. So that's our quick disclaimer there. Because this is a community webinar, we have a lot of folks joining us. We're very excited to have you tonight. We are having your cameras and microphones muted just as a precaution, so we can make sure that we are properly being heard. Again, those are going to be muted throughout, but later in the session, when we have our discussion session, we will unmute those that would like to make a comment and/or question. There is a closed caption option as well, so feel free to also click that button if anybody needs that. Again, we're going to be taking your questions and comments a little bit later during our discussion session, and so we ask that if you do have a question and/or comment, that you place it into the Q&A icon there on the bottom of your screen. The chat feature is going to be used only for our project team to communicate various public information, kind of, links and different things towards the audience. So that will be disabled. But again, you can use the Q&A icon there at the bottom. And again, you can raise your hand during our discussion session. And if you'd like to make a verbal comment, we'd love that. And we will unmute your mic. Next slide. So again, for those of you that maybe haven't participated in Zoom in a while, here's a quick little overview of how to use the raise your hand feature, the Q&A function. And for those of you that are calling in and you're just on your phone, later in the session, you can press 9 on your keypad, again, to raise your hand. And you will be announced by the last 4 digits of your phone number. And then again, you can mute yourself and unmute your audio by pressing 6. Next slide. So now I'm going to turn it over to Chris Buckley, who is our Senior Department Manager for Public Outreach at OCTA, and he's going to take you through our presentation. And one more quick note, we are also going to be launching some Zoom poll questions throughout the presentation, so we look forward to your participation in that as well. Okay, Chris.
Excellent. Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate that. Before I get started, I do want to mention we've got sort of a lot of background to cover here. What we're trying to do is get your feedback, as members of the community, members of the public, on the sort of transportation, the projects that are going on in Orange County, some of the challenges you see in your own communities, and ultimately, how we can make sure you're aware of Measure M projects, Measure M2 projects. So I'm going to go through some history first. I'm going to talk a little bit about I'll basically provide a refresher or some background, some new information. We can go to the next slide, please. About Measure M2. I want to talk a little bit about why this review is happening. I want to highlight some of the accomplishments and the challenges that we're facing right now, and then walk through sort of what's next, what lies ahead for us. But the most important part from my perspective is when we get to the end, we have some questions. We want to have this discussion, right? And we're really looking for your feedback. Part of that will include, you'll have the opportunity to, there'll be a QR code at the end of the presentation where you can shoot that and links to a survey. And we really, it's important, for our work here that you jump in and take that survey at the end. So with that, I'm going to go give you a little bit of background on Measure M. So this is a voter-approved program that's been in place since 2011. It runs through 2041, and it is funded by a local half-cent sales tax. The measure was passed in 2006 by nearly 70% of voters. It focused on practical, visible improvements from local street repairs to improved transit services, freeway upgrades, and environmental protections. The strength of M2 is that it benefits every community. And it's not just getting from A to B, it's really about access, it's about safety, equity, quality of life. It's been a very successful program, and it was passed in large part because the first Measure M, the current one we're in is a renewed measure, tax measure. The first Measure M was very successful. Smaller program, but we delivered projects on time, on budget. I think we're going to turn to our next slide in a second here, but first poll. We're going to do a couple of poll questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. So yeah, we're going to launch our first poll question. So if those folks that are on can take our first poll, question 1 and 2, we would love that. Question 1, did you know about Measure M2 before today? Question 2, did you know that the half-cent sales tax for transportation improvements in Orange County goes towards your city streets, freeways, transit, and regional environmental cleanup? So we'll give folks just a few minutes, maybe a minute to participate. All right. Looks like a lot of people did know about the measure before today. That's good news. And we have a good response on folks also knowing that the money goes towards their city streets, freeways, transit, and regional environmental cleanup. All right.
Excellent.
Thanks, Stevie. You can close that one up.
Perfect. Thank you. Next slide. So in these next few slides here, I want to talk a little bit about sort of the intent behind Measure M and the taxpayer safeguards. They're essential to Measure M's success, right? They ensure transparency, they build public trust, and they hold the program accountable to what voters approved back in 2006. That accountability is built into the plan in several ways. First off, we have an independent 11-member taxpayer oversight committee, and they monitor how funds are spent. They make sure that the spending is aligned with the voter-approved transportation investment plan. And funds must be used solely for transportation purposes. Local jurisdictions must meet strict eligibility and reporting requirements, and misusing funds can trigger full repayment and a 5-year suspension from receiving additional funding. In addition, we've got an ongoing evaluation process that's built in. We have quarterly and annual reports that track progress in spending. We have a triennial performance assessment that evaluates efficiency and effectiveness. And every 10 years, we have this comprehensive review, or at least every 10 years. And that assesses the performance of the programs and the projects. Any major changes to the investment plan, and this is an important piece. If we were to reallocate funds, you notice that some are in freeway, some are in transit. Any effort to reallocate funds between spending categories, that has to go back to voters for an approval. Next slide. So today we want to focus on Section 11 of Measure M2 in the ordinance, and it states at least every 10 years, the authority shall conduct a comprehensive review of all projects and programs implemented under the plan to evaluate the performance of the overall program, and the authority may revise the plan to improve its performance. So we've emphasized some key phrases here, right? The frequency and the scope of the reviews, because they highlight just how important this process is. The ordinance also outlines specific elements that must be considered in the review, which we've grouped into 5 categories, 5 key objectives. First, understanding external factors. This includes shifts in policy and travel behavior. We want to be able to evaluate how that affects M2's ability to deliver on its goals. We want to assess the financial capacity of the program to determine whether revenue remains sufficient to fulfill the measure's goals through 2041. We're measuring delivery progress. We're looking at how OCTA and local jurisdictions have performed over the last decade and whether adjustments are needed to improve results. And we need to identify constraints. There may be regulatory issues, funding, implementation changes that may impact our ability to deliver projects. So we have to look at that. And then the most important part, in my opinion, engaging stakeholders, right? Through outreach with local agencies, business groups, and the public. And this is important so that we can gather your input, your feedback, and make sure that we're in alignment. The 10-year review is a critical part of ensuring that the Measure M2 stays on track, is responsive to change, transparent in its performance, and grounded in the trust that voters placed in OCTA. Next slide, please. So it's important to recognize Measure M2 as a county-wide program, but the funding reaches every community. It supports everything from major freeway improvements to local street repairs and senior shuttles. Streets and roads, for example, the cities, each of your cities receives what's known as a formula-based funding amount, right? And that's for maintenance and repairs. That's called local fair share. The cities can also compete for funds through the Regional Capacity Program and signal synchronization projects. And lastly, under streets and roads, grade separations reduce congestion and improve safety where streets and rail lines intersect. On the transit side, we have the Senior Mobility Program that helps cities provide shuttle services for older adults. And we have community-based circulators like city trolleys. Those are funded under something called Project V. And then M2 also supports improvements to Metrolink and helps launch major projects like the OC streetcar. And lastly, freeways and environments. M2 freeway investments improve regional mobility and reduce congestion. And then environmental funds are used to clean up things like stormwater runoff and to protect open space as part of the freeway mitigation program. Next slide. So when Measure M2 passed in 2006, I think we're on the wrong slide. My apologies. So getting to the important part of what M2 has delivered so far, right? So what you can see out on the streets in front of you and using the services. We've invested more than $1.2 billion in local streets and road improvements. So that goes to resurfacing pavement, upgrading intersections, and maintaining key corridors. More than 3,700 traffic signals have been synchronized across the county, and that reduces the stop and go delay and improves traffic flow. In transit and mobility, we've spent more than $144 million to support transportation for seniors and people with disabilities. And this includes shuttle services for medical visits, shopping, and community programs. An additional $80.5 million has funded local shuttles and trolleys. That's that Project V. And that helps people get around downtowns, connect to major events, and it helps to fill that first and last mile gap. On the freeway and rail side, we've had 7 grade separation projects, the OC Bridges program, that have made rail crossings safer and more efficient for drivers and for trains. And meanwhile, half of the freeway projects, 15 of 30 freeway projects in the program, have been completed or are underway. And that's helping to ease congestion and improve regional mobility. And on the environmental side, more than 1,300 acres of open space have been preserved to offset the environmental impacts of transportation projects. And through cleanup efforts, more than 81.5 million gallons of trash have been prevented from reaching local waterways. I think we have another poll question at this point.
We do. Thank you, Chris. Okay, folks, if you would participate, we would be so grateful. When you think about what OCTA has delivered so far, what is most important to you? So select your top 3, and you can scroll down if you can't see all of the options. So the options are improvements to streets and roads, synchronized traffic signals, transportation for seniors and people with disabilities, local shuttles and trolleys, grade separation projects at rail crossings, freeway improvements, and environmental programs. So what are the top 3 that are most important to you? Give folks a few more seconds here. Looks like improvements to streets and roads is a clear first. And then it looks like local shuttles and trolleys coming in second there.
Interesting.
And yeah, the 3rd place would be synchronized traffic signals and environmental programs. Okay, thank you, everybody. We can go ahead and continue.
Before we go to the next slide, though, I want to mention something that's really important, and that is that when Measure M2 passed in 2006, revenue was initially projected to be $24 billion over the life of the measure, right? So from 2011 to 2041. And that's sales tax collections, right? Sales tax revenue. Before collections even began in 2011, OCTA launched early action plans to get those projects moving. But then the Great Recession hit and revenue fell well below expectations. So in response, OCTA developed the M2020 plan to focus on delivering the highest priority projects by 2020. And then, as we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic brought its own challenges that shifted travel patterns, it stressed transit operations, and created revenue uncertainty. But through it all, it's important to note that OCTA and our partners at the cities and the county kept delivering. Next slide. So as we look ahead, we've got some challenges, right? And that shapes how we deliver Measure M2. On the financial side, some good news, right? Despite the pandemic, our sales tax growth is anticipated to exceed the pre-pandemic projections over the period from 2019 to 2025. The growth is not entirely due to inflation. A lot of times people think that, but real growth, the actual growth in excess of inflation over that same period is 4.3%. So despite high inflation over the last few years, OCTA sales tax receipts are outpacing inflation. That said, we've got some cost pressures, right? We've got construction costs that continue to rise. That's driven by higher prices for materials and tariffs. And these pressures affect both capital projects and ongoing maintenance. So we need to plan carefully and prioritize. Access to funding. State grants are increasingly being directed towards zero emission and active transportation projects. That makes it more difficult to secure outside funding for traditional highway improvements. And we still have another 15 projects that we do need to deliver. Metrolink sustainability is an issue. Metrolink ridership has not fully recovered from the pandemic, and the operating costs are up. Sustaining service levels is going to require continued investment and coordination with regional partners. And then we have environmental risks. We've seen wildfires, we've seen erosion on the coast. That poses threats to our projects, to rail and project delivery. We've got something going on right now in San Clemente where we've been shoring up the rail line down there. There's continued work to do. We had to reduce passenger service for a bit, so it's been a little over a month, I think, since passenger service has been out. It will be resuming on the 7th, so that's good news for us. The last piece here is policy shifts, right? So state guidelines continue to emphasize reducing vehicle miles traveled and investing in non-auto modes, right? Getting people out of their cars and using transit. These policy shifts could influence project delivery times for us and funding eligibility. Poll question 3, I think, is coming up next, yeah?
Yes, number 4, I think.
Oh, pardon me, 4.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Okay, folks, what are the biggest challenges you think OCTA faces when improving transportation in Orange County? So based on the information you just heard and your own thoughts, please select your top 3. And again, you can scroll down and see all of them if they don't all show on your screen. We'll give folks another couple seconds. What are the biggest challenges you think OCTA faces when improving transportation in Orange County? Select your top 3. Sales tax revenue growth, construction costs, labor and materials are rising, fewer grant opportunities are available, Metrolink costs are up, but ridership revenue is flat, environmental concerns like coastal erosion and wildfires, and then new funding rules favor non-car projects. What are the biggest challenges? Okay, it looks like people are starting to slow down here. So it looks like, ooh, they're all pretty close here. But number 1 would be fewer grant opportunities are available. That's what it sounds like people are hearing. And number 2, close to construction costs, labor and materials are rising. And our number 3 would be sales tax revenue growth. Thank you, folks, for participating.
Yep. Makes sense. Thank you.
All right, Chris, we'll turn it back to you.
Sounds good. So next up, I want to talk about the Next 10 plan. This is a plan that we've developed. It emerged out of that I mentioned earlier, the M2020 plan. The Next 10 plan really looks ahead 10 years, and it is updated on a regular basis. It guides how we prioritize and deliver projects, in this case, through 2033, 2034. And this is approved by the board. So OCTA is run by a board of directors. The board is made up of the 5 county supervisors, as well as representatives from city councils throughout the county. So despite inflationary pressures, the program definitely remains deliverable. We expect nearly 90% of the freeway program to be completed by 2030. So we have a lot of projects coming up. They're either in design or beginning construction, and we'll be moving quickly on those to wrap them up in the next 5 to 6 years. Cities will continue to receive that local fair share, right? It's formula funding I mentioned earlier that goes toward repairs and improvements. That'll be for streets and road maintenance, right? And we'll continue supporting transit and community shuttle programs, along with ongoing competitive funding opportunities for street, signal, regional capacity, and water quality improvement projects. One exciting development, I don't know if those of you know, but we've got the OC streetcar out there. It's Orange County's first modern streetcar. Vehicle deliveries began in April, and the vehicles are arriving every 2 weeks, with 8 total. I think we have 3 on site so far. Testing is going to begin soon, and service is expected to start in 2026. The streetcar is going to connect key destinations between Santa Ana and Garden Grove, and it'll serve as a model for clean, high-capacity urban mobility. We're also committed to maintaining Metrolink service and adapting to the regional changes in commuting and transportation trends. OCT's beginning to develop the next cycle of its long-range transportation plan. That's another element of what we do in terms of planning. We plan out 20 plus years. This next one is going to go from 2026 to 2050, and that's really this feeds into a larger regional plan for transportation planning and even development, right, over the course of over the geographic area that includes all the southern counties, right, from I think Ventura County south. And that's a good opportunity for people to get involved in the discussion about sort of the future of transportation and what you think might be needed. We'll be starting our public outreach on that soon as well. But staying focused on the current situation and how M2 is performing, as part of this effort, we'll be evaluating how Measure M2 programs support the county's long-term goals and how these investments help meet future transportation needs across the county. It's important to emphasize that OCTA's planning, both financial and otherwise, continue to ensure that M2 projects and programs that are promised in the measure will be completed. So we are very committed to that. We've reached that point in the discussion. I think we're going to have one more poll question, but where we want to actually have a discussion with everybody and get your input, get your take, get your feedback on things.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Last poll, everybody. So if you could participate in this one, and then we'll move on to our robust discussion. When you think about OCTA's promises for the next 10 years, what is most important to you? And if you would select one, that would be great. So we have by 2030, 90% of the freeway program will be completed. Local fair share and competitive funding will continue to be available to cities. And OC streetcar in operation. And lastly, Metrolink services maintained in Orange County. So when you think about OCTA's promises for the next 10 years, what is most important to you? Looks like, Chris, we have by 2030, 90% of the freeway program will be completed. That's most important to folks.
It's important to us too.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everybody. We can go ahead and close that. Okay, next slide. So before we get into the discussion, Chris, we do have 3 questions here in the chat. So maybe we'll take those first and then we'll jump right into it. So we have a question here from Sean. How is M2 being used to increase train frequency, particularly on Metrolink lines serving Orange County?
So one of the Metrolink was previously sort of organized around a commuter service, right? So to provide trips back and forth to job centers, wherever it might be, LA, things like that, out to Riverside County. That was how their service was set up prior to the pandemic. After the pandemic, as ridership dropped significantly, and it still hasn't quite recovered. It's actually got a pretty long way to go. But they've changed their approach. They're more of a sort of a clock-based, right, approach. So wanting to create a more regular schedule for folks so that they could consider much more reliable transportation for them, right, to get to and from work as they needed. And Metrolink is funded by several partner agencies. So we're one of I believe, 7 agencies that fund Metrolink. And it's the transportation, regional planning, transportation companies around, or organizations right around Southern California. So, each of the board for Metrolink is made up of our board members. The CEOs from each of the agencies get together and discuss this as well. And there's really a lot of focus on making the best use of the budget, which is funded by these agencies, and ensuring that we're trying to provide an opportunity for people to use the train, not just for commuting, but for day trips, for, throughout the weekend, to go to events that they want to get to, things like that. So that's the effort of trying to improve the Metrolink service as a result of the ridership decline, and really trying to maintain it and expand it.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Okay, we have a few more, and then we'll stop after Federico, and we'll go right into our discussion and just take a pause on the question chat feature here. Okay. Sure. So
this is
from Sean again. Okay,
yeah, I'll mention
okay,
it.
perfect.
So Sean's asking about what is OCTA's plan to electrify Metrolink routes in Orange County. So Metrolink, Southern California Regional Rail Authority, right? As far as I know, they are not working on any plans to electrify routes, electrify track. But we will capture that question and send it off to our folks, our colleagues at Metrolink, and try to get a response for you if there's any discussion about that.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. All right, Sean has another one. Can you see that one as well?
Yes. What is OCTA's plan to accelerate rail grade separations across Orange County, especially in high traffic or high risk corridors? And how are those projects being prioritized within M2 funding? So at this point, most of the grade crossing and rail grade SEP work has been completed. We had an entire program called OC Bridges, and that was grade separation program. There's been work, and you can see this on our website if you just go to octa.net and take a look at the Measure M2 page, and you'll get more information. But more than a dozen rail crossings that have been addressed in terms of improving safety. One example down in San Juan Capistrano, they've implemented a positive train control directed sort of change there to make sure the crossing arms are brought down appropriately. A lot of changes throughout the county. I don't know that we have anything specific. We do have a few outstanding projects. One that I can think of is it's off of 17th Street. So there's one there. There are a few, but that's not a priority for us at this time.
Great, thanks, Chris. And then one more from Federico.
Yes, Federico's asking, you mentioned that OCTA is committed and planning to deliver on its projects despite the current funding challenges. Federico's asking for some specifics as to how we plan to deal with the challenges. You've got a very conservative board that has planned really well for eventualities like this. We have I won't say like a balance sheet. It's not, you know, it's not to that extent, right? But we have a clear path forward. We've saved money. For example, the money that came out of the pandemic relief effort, that money has been set aside. We have a strong reserve. There's our complete annual financial report is on our website, so you can take a look at that. But we just have a very conservative board, and we take a very conservative approach. Another way that we ensure the Measure M2 dollars go as far as possible is we backstop them through applying for state and federal grants. And we're very aggressive doing that so that we may spend some M2 money, but we will backfill behind it with state and federal dollars.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to move away from the Q&A feature there and go into live discussion. So for those of you that are so inclined, please, we'd love to hear from you. What transportation challenges and needs matter most to you and why? So after hearing everything that's going on with Measure M2 and the current review and all the great projects that are being worked on, what transportation challenges and needs matter most to you and why? So if you'd like to answer verbally, just raise your hand and we will unmute your microphone so you can participate. Otherwise, you can also enter your comments into the Q&A feature. But don't be shy. What
yes,
transportation?
we really want that feedback.
Yeah, what transportation challenges and needs matter most to you and why? So think about where you live, what city you live in, what transportation needs do you face daily? Maybe, you know, during your commute. Maybe you're running around, taking kids around to sporting events. Tell us what you think. All right, we have a comment here from Dominic. And the comment is getting around OC safely without a motor vehicle. So that's one. Yeah,
Dominic, we're hearing that a lot more today than these days than in the past. And I think that's a reflection of some of the sort of changing culture, if you will. Plus a lot of younger generation folks. We've had several who come to our board meetings and talk about the need to improve the bus routes, improve bus service, improve that last mile service as well, and just provide additional transit options, ensure that bike trails are being connected to one another, that you don't have gaps in sidewalks as we do in some parts of the county for example, in Los Alamitos, where it crosses into LA County to Long Beach there. So it is a common sentiment these days. Thank you for that.
Yes,
anybody else have any challenges, anything they think we should talk about?
Looks like Sean has a comment there. Chris,
about the streetcar, yeah. Are there any additional streetcar or light rail lines being planned or considered for other parts of Orange County? Gosh, Sean, from your lips to the board's ears, yeah, absolutely. We would love to expand OC Streetcar, but the most important thing right now is to get it going and get it into service, and that's expected next year. Once we have some history there, and once we have some experience under our belt, I imagine we'll be looking at opportunities to expand that. Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. And it looks like we had a raised hand. Stevie from our team, if you could assist in that.
Hello.
Yes, hello, Andrew.
Hi, my name is Andrew. Something that I struggle with is, you know, you kind of hear about these new projects and you hear about freeway expansions. I have a hard time with that. Just like not only does it have a big impact on, you know, local businesses for a very long time, but also has a big impact on on communities. So I just think like if we can be like a little bit more efficient with the money, you know, and kind of like diversify. Like we're also running out of space. There's only so much we can expand. But you know, just kind of diversifying a little bit, spreading that money out a little bit more efficiently, and just like you know, diversifying the transportation portfolio. Like, you know, I'm a big driver, but you know, I also need the opportunity to be able to you know take the train, bike to work. Like
Sure.
I'm in favor of the options.
That's great feedback, Andrew. That's exactly what we're looking for. Thank you. We've got a couple of comments here in the Q&A. I'm going to respond to those, but then I want to move to the next slide if we can. And in fact, let's go ahead and put the next slide on the screen so people can see it. Sean is asking, will there be signal prioritization for the OC streetcar? And the answer is no. It drives along with the cars in the streets, just like every other vehicle. So no on that one. And then Federico's asking, in addition to the senior transportation, our senior mobility programs, does M2 offer ADA transportation for people with disabilities? And the answer is yes. So, and these senior mobility programs and programs for people with disabilities, they are program offered through Measure M. In addition, we have the Access program. And there's an application process, so you have to qualify. They have to be eligible to use that access service. But that is door to door. On the other side of things, though, there is the opportunity for people with disabilities to use the mobility programs that we have, and it's all run through cities. So I would recommend, if you have any questions about what's going on with your city, that you reach out to them and see if they have that type of service. But it would be funded by OCTA.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris.
And I'd like to take this next comment and frame it. Thank you very much. Harry Joe says M2 projects are the best projects I've ever seen. Yeah, we have a hardworking group of people here at OCTA, and really putting their best efforts in. And then we've got great partnerships with Caltrans and with the cities to really carry off a lot of these projects. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Harry. Okay, we're going to move into our next question. Which M2 funded projects have made the biggest impact, and what should be prioritized going forward? So thinking about everything we just went through,
Right.
the various
freeway projects,
Go ahead, Chris.
transit, OC streetcar, for example. Obviously, it's not. I mean, it's had somewhat of an impact because of construction, but any of the streets and roads, any of the improvements you've seen there in your cities, again, funded typically by Measure M funds, local funds, competitive grant funds, or the local fair share dollars. Anything like that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Chris. So which M2 funded projects have made the biggest impact to you, and what should be prioritized going forward? So thinking about, local freeway updates, anything local that you've seen, anything that's impacted your commute, something that's made your life easier. We'd love to hear from you. Or maybe you don't know and you have a question. If there's something that was worked on, maybe we can clarify that.
Sure. I mean, it could be as simple as, more bike lanes, right? Or more protected bike lanes. More light rail, more streetcar options, right? I think we did have that mentioned before. I think Sean was looking for that anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So which M2 funded projects have made the biggest impact and what should be prioritized going forward? Any thoughts? Anything you guys want to share as far as what you want to see the money go towards moving forward?
Another program that's been popular is our Project V program, and that is funds the local shuttles, right, or trolleys. For those of you in South Orange County, or you may have gone down to one of these cities and taken the shuttles, but there are shuttles in San Clemente, Dana Point, San Juan Capistrano, and Laguna Beach. And they are all run by the respective cities, funded by Measure M, but they connect, right? So you can go from city to city to city in one day and see the sights at the coast.
Or has anybody experienced any of the senior service local services? That might be something that has positively impacted your commute or your family's commute. Okay.
Dominic weighed in, saying he'd like to see protected bike lanes and pedestrian crossings prioritized. And again, we're hearing a lot of that. In fact, we've got a study that we're doing right now with the cities, in partnership with the cities, Dominic, that is called the OC Bikeway Connectivity Study. You can find more information about that on our website, including how to potentially get involved. As we move through that study, and the purpose of the study is to see what kind of options might be out there, what kind of interest do people have, what would they like to see, similar to what you put here, right? But ultimately, we'll have some fairs, bike fairs or sort of expos down the line a bit, where hopefully we can test out some different kinds of protected bike lanes. There are cities around the county. Costa Mesa, I know, is heavily sort of bike driven, bike driven community. They hold that in high regard. They've got a commission dedicated to that, as well as pedestrian mobility. So I definitely encourage you to get involved in that study, and also to mention that as part of our long range transportation plan.
Perfect. Let's jump over to a raised hand here, Chris. Gabriel, we're going to unmute you so you can ask your question or make your comment. So Steve.
Hi. Yeah. Perfect. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't on at the beginning of this, so I don't I'm not sure which projects were actually M2 funded and which ones weren't. But as far as priorities in the future, I mean, I used to use the bus to work like every day, and honestly, I loved it. It was so great having a time of day where I could de-stress on my way home and just whatever, read my books or
Did we lose you there?
That's great. Thank you, Gabriel. Yeah, I think you cut out. Yeah, but thank you for your comment. That is greatly received.
More options, I think, is what we're hearing.
Yeah.
More options.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to come back to the chat.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
And Melanie Schlotterbeck. Melanie.
There's literally a bus that goes from.
Sounds like you're coming back. Yeah, you know what? I think you're back now, Gabriel. Yeah. Do you want to finish your thought? Go ahead. No, you're cutting out again. Well, maybe we can try again later. All right, let's go ahead, Chris. You can move on.
Melanie's asking, she'd like to understand how the environmental mitigation program will continue to meet its goal of protecting and restoring land to meet the requirement in ordinance number 3. I think that's a great question. The environmental mitigation program is ongoing. As some may know, there's preserve management. We've purchased more than 1,300 acres of wilderness preserves, and that will remain protected from development into perpetuity. So I think that is a very important part of the mitigation program. There are hikes and rides that are a part of that, so it gives people an opportunity to, where possible, ride horses on these lands or take hikes on these lands. It's all organized through our website. So there's octa.net. I would head there and you can search for hikes and rides and you'll find it. We also have an environmental oversight committee, and it includes chairs and I know, Melanie, as you know, you're part of it, but the chair is a member of our board, and it has people from various agencies, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife Service. We have some taxpayer oversight committee members on there as well. And their job is to make sure that the program continues to be implemented. If there are any technical and policy recommendations that need to be made to the board, they will do that. So you can find more information about that as well on our website. Thanks for that question. John mentions a Laguna Niguel also has a free trolley connecting from Metro Station to other South OC trolleys. That's a new one. We did hear this morning that might be something that is in the works or perhaps has started. You might also be thinking of something called OC Flex. And OC Flex was a pilot program, an OCTA pilot program for microtransit. It's actually going to sunset at the end of this month and not be continued because the ridership just wasn't really there for it. But I think we're always looking for opportunities to develop new ideas when it comes to that last mile connections, those last mile connections, and just community connections. Very important. Sean, I appreciate this comment. The most impactful projects being those that have been have expanded access to public transit, like improvements to Metrolink, investments in bus service and active transportation infrastructure. Yeah, I think that's definitely something we're hearing a lot more of, that it's important and we need to keep doing that and prioritize it even more. I appreciate your comment here as well about grade separations, improving train reliability and safety, electrification for service, expanding the streetcar lines. We'd love to do that, right? In dense communities, it's a very good idea. It would be great to see it go to John Wayne. It would be great to see it go, up to Disneyland. It'd be great to see it, connect in more places with, with Metrolink stations. So good opportunities for that. Appreciate that feedback. Federico mentions that he sees a lot of benefits for the transportation for senior and people with disabilities, disabled. I see people taking them to work, so it's really helping, and I really appreciate that. That's good. Those are definitely ones we want to keep. Oh, thanks, John, for the update on that. The second year for the Laguna Niguel shuttle. Perfect.
And then
Gabriel's
Gabriel,
back.
back on. Yep.
Yeah. Prioritizing greater bus efficiency. Yeah, we're all, it's funny, we've just increased service, and we're always looking for opportunities to do that. We have a couple of really important programs that have really helped us restore, our passenger numbers to pre-COVID numbers. We've definitely achieved that. And that includes our Youth Ride Free Pass, and that's for anybody, I think kids up to the age of 18. We have a college pass program as well. We work with the local community colleges and it's at a discounted price there. It's paid through the ASB program or whatever you'd call it.
Wonderful. We have another comment from Sean.
Yeah. So Sean's asking, what is OCTA's long-term strategy for addressing the repeated rail disruptions in San Clemente? So excellent question. And then let's go on to the next slide as well. Yeah. So there are a couple of things happening. One of the things that I think Sean is referring to is we've had coastal erosion going on, both on the beach side and then on the bluff side. And that has interrupted service. It's interrupted service a number of times over the last 3 or 4 years. And we've been able to start getting ahead of that. We initiated a study in 2023 called the Coastal Rail Resiliency Study. And as part of that, there was an initial assessment done that identified 7 areas that really needed attention quickly. And some work had been done already in some of those areas, but we focused on 4 areas, and we've been working with state and federal regulators to try to move quickly on those before the emergency occurs to try to address that coastal erosion and the bluff side erosion. So over the last 6 weeks or so, we shut off rail service, to proactively address this erosion and stabilize the track, right? Part of that is done through the placement of very large boulders, very large rocks called riprap. We've just completed that in 2 of the 4 areas. And then we also have a 3rd area that we're going to be on the inland side building a wall that will reincorporate the beach trail along that area as well. So we're working on that element. And lastly, there's a 4th area that we're looking at different solutions to shore up, but we continue to do that. And these are meant to last, the next, say, 10 to 30 years, right? These solutions. We're looking at some additional solutions for the entire stretch of corridor there. I believe it's about 7 miles along the coast. And that's part of the study overall. So in addition to that initial assessment, we have this longer study that's going to be going on for the next probably year or so, a little more than a year or so. And that is to look at some additional alternatives that might help us stabilize areas where we anticipate sometime in the next 10 to 30 years there will be issues. And the approach to that is to identify the alternatives, identify potential solutions, right? Identify the issues, identify potential solutions, talk to the public about those. We'll have a couple of meetings coming up here in the next several weeks to months to talk through some of those, and then ultimately get approval sort of from the board to see what of that we would move forward with. That study is expected to be completed in the next, like I said, about in the next year or so. And we have information on our website about it, octa.net/CRRS. You'll find that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. So Emilio has a comment, and I believe it's in reference to this next question that we have. So I'll go ahead and ask that question, and then we can address his comments and questions here. So next question, folks. How can OCTA ensure future updates to M2, how can OCTA ensure future updates to M2 reflect what communities and voters truly need and expect? So when you think about programs and projects, how can OCTA ensure future updates to M2 reflect what communities and voters truly need and expect? So I'll turn it over to you, Chris, to respond to Emilio.
I'll do that. I notice Emilio's hand is up too.
Oh, great.
Can we allow him to jump in?
We can unmute him if his hand is still up.
Hello, how's it going?
Great, how are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much for this. Yeah, I wanted to know, especially in reference to M2, how can the M2 be used moving forward for our existing needs, like is mentioned here on the question? Because when it was put forward 30 years ago, I think it was very much car-centric and focused on traffic flow. And since then, we know there's so much research on induced demand for traffic. And I see in my community, we get M2 funding here in Santa Ana for improving our arterials, and that usually just means widening the street and then adding a bike lane, which as a cyclist and a multimodal user I appreciate. But it really doesn't improve the city. It increases their liability because we were going to have to do maintenance down the line. There's already a $250 million backlog, and arterials are not very friendly to bike anyway. So even if you're putting a bike lane, even if it's protected, it's not really something that I want to go out of my way to bike if I can help it.
Thanks, Emilio, for the comment. I appreciate that. And then I think, you know, harking back to the first part of the presentation, you know, the measure delivered part of the measure was this transportation investment plan and very clear programs articulated throughout there. And you're right, you know, the majority of the programs, gosh, A through M essentially, are freeway programs. It was, it's ultimately broken out into 30 different projects. And we are committed to keeping that promise. Yes, it was voted on in 2006, began in 2011, but we remain committed to that, and that's not going to change. The opportunity is and through your input here is really to look at, are there ways to is there a need or is there benefit to changing, you know, reallocating funds within a given program. You got to remember, we have the freeway program at 43%, streets and roads at 25, I think, and transit at 32. And that is fixed. We would not be able to change that and move money from freeways over to transit without going back to voters, right? Without a vote of the voters, a vote of the electorate. So there's the more important thing is to get the feedback that you're providing and look for opportunities to say, hey, would it make more sense for us to put more funding toward helping cities, you know, create protected bike lanes, right? Things like that. I mean, there's a little bit of funding for, you know, for bike lanes and bicyclists, but really that's not what M is oriented to. I think the other thing we're really using this information for is looking ahead, right? As part of that long-range transportation plan, that's, I think, the opportunity. And as I mentioned, we'll be coming out with outreach on that soon here in the next few months. That's the opportunity to really talk about what you'd like to see beyond M2, right? And trying to sort of make those suggestions.
Thank you, Chris. Time check here. We're rounding towards the end, so we want to make sure we get through the rest of these comments and our last question. So quickly, Chris, can we look at Federico's comment, and then Emilio also had a follow-up.
Yeah, re-engaging the community, really, and that's what we're trying to do here, trying to do now. But I think there's a larger opportunity, Federico, to do just that, to re-engage the community and help them understand, you know, the scope of Measure M, and sort of take this show on the road, if you will, and then get additional feedback. And we do plan to do that, absolutely. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's go to our final question. And that is,
I think Emilio was
one more
asking
comment?
if freeway improvements could be reframed to convert lanes into bus rapid transit. There are no plans that I know of to do that, and no, we couldn't move from the freeway program to bus rapid to a transit category of funds without going to the voters. And I say that would require significant effort and board approval, among other things.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, last question, folks. What's the best way to keep you informed and engaged with M2 projects and progress? So when we think about, you know, all the information you guys receive, what's the best way that you would recommend getting this information moving forward? Is it online? Is it a postcard? Tell us what you think.
Thanks, Melanie. Yeah, I think everybody would definitely say that. Social media, texts, and emails. And I think you know, one of the things that we've also heard suggested is partnering with the cities on a social media marketing program, right? To talk about what's happening in their city and the connection to Measure M. So opportunities to do that as well.
Definitely. Thank you, Chris. Partnerships are key. Okay, anybody else? Any other thoughts there? I know we've heard in the past signs on the freeway have always been helpful. So if you agree, you can add a comment there. Looks like Gabriel has another comment here, Chris.
Sure.
So it's easy to find quarterly reports and future meetings like this later in the evening to avoid commuting and dinner time.
So you're saying, Gabriel, make it easier to find the quarterly reports? And completely understand about future meeting times. It's interesting. We get varying requests about that, right? Avoiding commute time, avoiding dinner time. Some people would prefer to do it earlier though, and get it out of the way before having dinner. Sometimes we've tried a couple of times where we hold it in the middle of the day as well, because some people have asked for that. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. The good part about it is these types of discussions that we have are recorded, and we post the results on the website. Everybody, we had quite a number of people who registered for the webinar, and we'll be sharing the recording with them ultimately. So opportunities.
Yes, perfect. Thanks, Chris.
Let's move to that last slide. For me, I think, like I mentioned at the beginning, I think this is one of the most important things. We could really use your help. Scan that QR code or go to our website. You can find out more about the M2 review process there. But scanning that QR code takes you directly to our survey. Please fill that out. Share that with family and friends. Feel free to share it across your social media accounts as well. Getting the message out there really helps.
Yes, please do that, everybody. Just take a picture of it now. Even if you can't fill it out now, take a picture of it. It's on your phone. You can go back to it later. It takes literally a minute, maybe a minute, 30 seconds. We would love your formal feedback. And again, just as Chris said, please share it with your family and friends, anybody in Orange County. We would love to hear from those folks. Well, I think that just about wraps it up, Chris. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, I was looking at our slide here, contact OCTA for follow-up conversations. If anybody does have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We don't have that email address on here, but it's very easy to remember. It's m2review@octa.net. Very simple.
Yeah, and we can also throw it in the chat as well.
That's a great idea.
My team would do that. That'd be great. Yep, there it is. So there's a project email there for you. If anybody has any follow-up requests or questions, as Chris said, we are happy to respond. Okay, well, with that, thank you everybody for taking time tonight to sit with us and learn more about the M2 review study. We will be sending out more information as we continue throughout the study. And again, please reach out with any additional comments or questions.
Thank you all very much for your time. We really appreciate it. We know it's precious, so thank you.
Thanks, everybody.